so much violence and terror in the world, people are even more stressed than usual, even more tense than usual. Or until and unless you are a high enough ranking official in NATO, in the United Nations, until and unless you are someone with that level of power, or the head of Hamas, or the head of another organization, there's very little actually that any of us can do, because the blood vessels are so full of what we call plaque that the blood cannot flow. These days, with so much violence and terror in the world, with so much hatred and fighting and othering and polarization, whether it's Israel, Gaza, Palestine, whether it's Ukraine, Russia, whether it's Sudan, whether it's so many places in the world, there's so much rage, so much hatred, so much terror, that wherever you look, people are even more stressed than usual, even more tense than usual, able to access peace even less than usual. So what to do? So first of all, other than prayer, and our prayer is very important, very powerful, but other than prayer, there's very little that any of us individually can do to change that situation. Until and unless you are the president or prime minister of a country that's involved, or until and unless you are a high enough ranking official in NATO, in the United Nations, until and unless you are someone with that level of power, or the head of Hamas, or the head of another organization, there's very little actually that any of us can do to change the logistics of that situation, other than pray. So number one, use the power of prayer. Every morning, every evening, before each meal, just hold those people in your heart. Hold the women, hold the children, hold the civilians of these countries, the people who are suffering. Hold them in your heart. But number two, recognize that worrying about it, fearing it, being stressed about it, isn't actually helping anybody. Your stress, your upset is not going to fix anything there. And all it's going to do is make you unable to be an effective or efficient instrument of peace in the world. Because even though we can't do a lot about what's happening in Israel or Gaza or Russia or Ukraine, there is a lot we can do about the peace in our families, in our societies, in our communities. Our ripple impact is there. It just may not be quite as far as the Middle East. So start where you live. Make sure that there's no discrimination. You are bringing to the world is something you are giving with no bhav, no discrimination, for all. There's a reason that spiritually we are taught, love all, serve all. That allness, that oneness, is the highest and deepest and truest tenet of our spiritual tradition. When we say aham brahmasmi, or tattvam asi, or soham, they're all different ways of essentially saying I am one with the divine, one with the creator, one with the creation, one with the universe, meaning I am one with all. Because God doesn't play favorites. God's not going to be one with you but not with you. So if I'm one with the divine creator, it means by nature I am one with all of the creation. So use your time, your talent, your technology to bring peace in the places that you can. Feed hungry people. Clean up the gullies, the streets, the alleys, the rivers where you are, because it all ends up in our water bodies. And when people are suffering and dying due to polluted water, polluted air, polluted soil, that's not peace. That's violence. So use your impact, your influence, your experience, your expertise to bring whatever type of peace you can in the world. Plant trees, clean water, donate to organizations that are doing great work, feed people, educate people, help provide free medical care to people, either individually or through organizations that are doing it. Number 3. So number 1 is pray. Hold them in your prayers, hold them in your heart. Number 2 is recognizing that we cannot do so much there, but we can do a lot here, and so we do it. Number 3 is realizing on a very deep spiritual level that it's all in God's hands. Now that's not a license to be complacent or lazy. In the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagwan Krishna makes it so clear, even with him being Arjun's charioteer, he makes it so clear. Stand up, khade ho jao. Do your duty. You must fight this war. You must do your duty. You must fulfill your dharma. So that teaching is not just for Arjun, but it's for all of us. Being spiritually anchored and grounded does not mean that we just sit back on the couch and we eat potato chips and we watch TV because, hey, wo to sab Bhagwan ki haath mein hai. No. It means that we recognize that, yes, it is all in God's hands, meaning we surrender, we have faith. That surrender and that faith brings us peace in our hearts. And when our hearts are in peace, then we are able to rise as peaceful, wise, clear, connected instruments in God's hands. We are able to be clear channels, vessels, vehicles of the divine flow here on earth. So we recognize there is a perfection in the universe, a divine perfection of a divine creator, and that us playing our role, whatever it may be, and it may just be teaching our children to be peaceful people, teaching our children not to discriminate, teaching our children that all are one. Whatever area we have of influence, we use that as that instrument in God's hands. But we can only do that when we are in peace inside. So we meditate, we pray, we chant our japa, we do our mantra, we do our seva that purifies our mind, that purifies our intellect, that purifies our life, so that we can actually be clear channels of that divine flow of peace. Otherwise, what ends up happening is we have spiritual heart attacks. A physical heart attack happens not because there's not enough blood, but because the blood vessels are so full of what we call plaque that the blood cannot flow. So first the blood vessel gets very, very narrow. You get high blood pressure. Eventually the blood vessel fills up completely. Blood can't flow. You have a heart attack. Spiritually, the same thing happens. When our channel gets so full of junk, of ego, of ignorance, of fear, of attachments, of false identifications, of division, of maya, then that flow of grace cannot flow through us. So neither can we benefit from it, nor can we share it with others. So the first and most important thing to do is clear that channel. Do your meditation, say your prayers, chant your japa, whatever your spiritual practice may be, as we open our hearts to that oneness with the world. Yes, there's pain. There's pain. Yes, there's suffering. And we open our hearts to that. We cry along with Israeli mothers, along with Palestinian mothers, along with Ukrainian mothers, Russian mothers, who are losing their children, who are losing their husbands, or husbands losing their wives. But simultaneously, we open our heart to every family in which there's been a new birth, to every family in which there's been a wedding, to everyone who has emerged from a hospital cured and well and celebrating. Because opening our heart to all is not only to the sadness and the despair and the death and the darkness, it's also opening our heart to the birth and the light and the celebration and the joy. So make sure that you're not lopsidedly opening your heart only to the pain. Open your heart also to the flowers that are blossoming, that are opening their petals as the sun's rays fall on them. Open your heart to the beautiful cry of a newborn baby who's just emerged healthy into the world. Open your heart into that joy, that celebration, that life as well. Because as there is darkness, so there is light. As there is night, so there is day. And to be open to it all requires that we really open to it all.